The next subject we're going to cover is low-G mass pumping. But before we can really understand low-G mass pumping, you have to have an understanding of how the helicopter is controlled and what damping is. First of all, let's talk about an airplane. In an airplane, if we want to roll the airplane to the left or roll the airplane to the right, we do that by deflecting our ailerons. For instance, if this is my left wing and this is my right wing, if I want to roll the airplane to the right, I deflect this aileron down, this aileron up, so that I produce more lift on this wing, less lift on this wing, and the airplane rolls to the right. We're all very familiar with that. And the moment being produced by that difference in lift between the left wing and the right wing is transferred to the fuselage of the helicopter through the rigid attachment of those wings to the aircraft. So that's how I control the airplane. Now when I put in a certain amount of lateral control in the airplane and the airplane starts to roll to the right, the airplane will not continue to roll faster and faster and faster. The rate of roll will tend to be limited by the damping and roll that that airplane has. What is damping and roll? Damping and roll is the fact that when the airplane starts to roll to the right, this wing will be going down, and this wing will be going up. The downward velocity of this wing, when combined with the forward flight velocity of the airplane, will increase its angle of attack and increase the lift on this wing in proportion to that rate of roll. Just the reverse will happen on this wing. So that the faster the airplane is rolling to the right, the greater will be the moment produced due to this damping in the opposite direction. That will always tend to limit the rate of roll, regardless of whether that rate of roll is induced by the pilot deflecting his ailerons or just due to turbulence. So that's the way that it works in an airplane. Now keep in mind that both the control power of those ailerons and the damping and roll are dependent only on the downward velocity of this wing, or the rate of roll, and the forward flight velocity. If I do a 2G pull-up with the airplane, I can double the amount of lift being produced by both wings, but it will have no effect on either my lateral control or in my damping and roll. With an airplane, I can push the stick forward and go do a pushover all the way to 0 Gs. And again, I can bring the total or net lift from those two wings to 0, but I will not have affected my control and roll, and I will not have affected my damping and roll. I can even roll the airplane upside down and fly inverted, and I will still have the same control and roll, the same damping and roll. Now let's talk about a helicopter. Well, in straight and level 1G flight, a helicopter flies very, very similar to an airplane. But it has a very similar control and roll, and it has a very similar damping and roll. But it comes from an entirely different source in the case of a helicopter. For instance, the control and roll comes from the fact that when I put in right cyclic, I can tilt the rotor to the right, which tilts the thrust or lift of that rotor to the right. The line of thrust passing up on the left side of that center of gravity of the helicopter will produce a rolling moment to the right. Or conversely, if I put in left cyclic. So that's how I'm controlling the helicopter in roll in forward flight. The helicopter also has damping and roll, which tends to limit that rate of roll. The damping in the helicopter comes from the gyroscopic lag of that rotor. If the fuselage of the helicopter is rolling to the left, the rotor will follow, but it will follow a time increment later because of the gyroscopic lag of that rotor. The fact that the rotor will lag behind means that the thrust or lift of that rotor will also lag behind. And when it lags behind, it again is producing a moment in the opposite direction from which that helicopter is rolling. And that provides the damping which limits that rate of roll. And frankly, if we didn't have damping in both airplanes and helicopters, they would be so sensitive that a pilot would not be able to fly them. And it's that damping that slows things down limits things, and makes them controllable for the pilot.